Right, guys. So essentially, I just wanted to be going over a macro tracking cheat sheet that I have pretty much developed to give you guys a little bit of an intro into what macros are, how to track them, and how you can track them to achieve your goals if you are wanting to sort of figure things out on your own, or if you are wanting a little bit more information in this area. So essentially, your macronutrients are your three main things you hear plastered all over Instagram. They're your proteins, your carbs, and your fats. These need to be adequately distributed throughout your day to ensure normal hormone function, normal brain function, muscle growth, energy production, all of that sort of thing. So you have your three main ones. And then you also have alcohol, which is another different subset that I could ramble on forever about. And that is essentially going to be included by some people, but not all. It's essentially broken up into a macronutrient is because it is only when once it's in the body, that's the only thing that gets work towards to break down initially. So it stops the function of the body trying to eliminate all the other macronutrients in our body or get the macronutrients out from our body because its process is to eliminate ethanol. But that's like another different tangent that I could take. So essentially, carbs. They are deemed as a weapon in today's society. If you're eating them before a certain time, if you're eating them after a certain time, you're pretty much being told that you're going to be getting fat. That is, fortunately for a lot of carb lovers, it is not the case. It just really depends on how much carbs you are eating and what you are doing with them, the types of them as well. So carbs should not be demonized. These are our body's primary source of energy. This is always used for brain function, intense exercise. This is why you'll hear bodybuilders doing a carb load, is because you actually need carbs to go into your muscles to make them look big. So if we're not having any carbs, what's the science behind that? If bodybuilders are doing it and they look the way they do on stage, why couldn't you do it? That's just a little thing to keep in mind. Um, Digestion, so it's pretty much stored as glycogen in the liver and the muscle. It matters because quick energy, sustained energy, and replenishing all of our glycogen stores after exercise to top it up. So then we're able to perform again at the highest level. So you can get it in your whole foods, your simple carbs, and your complex carbs. They are there for you. Protein. This is everywhere. Everywhere. You need to be having a high protein, low fat diet. Protein is so essential when it comes to building muscle and then just everyday life. So it's going to make sure that we're sustaining this muscle for longevity, essentially. We want to make sure that we are eating enough to maintain muscle, to gain muscle. It's pretty much what is going to be that building block for us to achieve our physique results. So essentially, as you can see, structural and functional roles to build muscle, enzymes, hormones, and immune cells. We have these on the board on the screen, sorry, your supplements, your plant-based and your animal-based. So you can still make sure that you are having a high protein diet, even if you are animal-based, or vegan, vegetarian. It's just about going into the foods that sort of are there for you. So you got your tofu, you got your legumes. There's so many different plant-based things at the moment as well that you can be using. And fats. Oh, I feel like everything's just demonized at the moment. But fats are also one of those things where low fat can't be having too much fat. Fats are so important, especially for women, when it comes to your brain health and your hormone health and functioning. If you aren't consuming enough fats, this is where you can go into things like amenorrhea, so you lose your period. You want to make sure that you are consuming enough for your height, for your weight, for your energy output to make sure that you are functioning as a human being. So essentially, when it comes to your macro intake, this is what is going to be determining our energy in versus our energy out. So to be in a calorie deficit, to be in a calorie surplus, you need to make sure that you are either eating more or less than your energy expenditure. Or if you're just wanting to maintain, that's absolutely fine as well. So essentially, I have a thing here that you can use. So you can have a calculator online, a TDEE, so total daily energy expenditure calculator. So this will prompt you to fill it out. It's usually the your height, your weight, your activity level, and it does all the calculations for you. Or you can use this basal metabolic rate estimation. I've done this before. and it actually works. You know, you just have to sort of use a scientific calculator. If you don't have one, it's going to give you a little bit of a random result. So just make sure you're following, what is it? Oh my gosh, that thing that we always used to get taught in high school, with your brackets, timesing, all that sort of stuff. So make sure you're using brackets before you go and calculate this. And then you're pretty much going by your activity factor. If you are going into a fat loss phase, make sure that you are accurately assessing your activity factor. You don't want to be overestimating that you are super active when you're might be only very active. This could be the difference between you getting your results and then you still being in a slight maintenance to a surplus. Now, these are all based on calculations. There is human error, so I always do recommend speaking to a coach or a nutritionist, or a healthcare professional to guide you through your macro intake, because this is when we can start to see things that come up, like low energy availability. So we're not fueling our body enough. But this is a basic thing that you are going to be able to use if you are sort of wanting to do your own macronutrient targets. So this has also got a bit of a goal. So depending on where you are at in your phase, if you're wanting to build muscle, you are going to want to be adding on 10 to 20% onto your TDEE. So essentially getting that total daily energy expenditure amount and then timesing that by 10 to 20%. I personally would always start gradually. So for your loss or your gain, you are going to want to start building week to week gradually. You don't want to be all of a sudden jumping up like 300 calories, or opposite way, 300 calories down, because if this is your first time doing this, you don't know your body. You want to be making sure that you are not unnecessarily cutting out any calories or any macronutrients, because it's just not going to end well. This is where you can go into excessive weight gain, excessive weight loss, and then this comes back to the whole rebound diets, not being able to reverse out of it properly. Again, I always do recommend getting a coach, but if you feel like you're a smart chookie and you can do this, absolutely go for it. Here are the tools for it. So protein, these are the sort of guidelines based on the Australian recommendations, based on your body weight, what you want to be consuming per kilo. So you still want to make sure, even if you are in a fat loss phase, you can still see that you're still aiming from 1.5 to 2 kilos, 1.5 to 2 grams per kilo, just to make sure that you are preserving muscle. With your gain, you can sort of get away with like having the same amount, because sometimes you get into eating some ridiculous amounts of protein when you really just don't need to. When you come to maintain, you're pretty much just making sure, actually across all of them, you want to make sure that your fats are still pretty high, especially when it comes to women. High meaning the healthy range, that's usually around 60 to 80 grams, depending on your height, weight, activity level. But that is going to be your, like the grams that you should pretty much be within to sustain human functioning and living as a female. As it comes to men, I'm not as well versed in it. Just go on the Australian guidelines, and just sort of see what works for you best. Essentially, when it comes to this, you got your macro goal, what you're going to be aiming for, and then going back from there. So you got a little example of how many you should be eating if that was your goal. There you go. Made simple for you. Your handy tracking tips. So these are things that I wish I knew when I first started my fitness journey. So making sure that you are choosing a food scale that has a 1 gram accuracy. If you are only needing 1 gram of thing, which is very rare, but it's going to the gram. You're not like, it's not being rounded to 5 grams, and you can sort of see if you're adding in 1 gram at a time rather than jumping from like, it only goes in increments of 2. I have had a scale like that before. Worst thing in the world. You can literally just get it from Kmart. That's where my scale currently is from. It doesn't go from the 1 gram initially, but then it rounds up to 1 gram accuracy. For your function, it needs to have a 0, so you need to be able to zero the scale every single time. This just makes it so easy if you're having one meal. You got one container and you're just putting things into the container. You don't want to have to, turn it off, turn it back on. You just want to be able to tear it every single time. Your food weighing basics, you want to make sure that you are always weighing everything raw. Okay, you're not weighing your cooked pasta, you're not weighing your cooked meat because if you are doing cooked pasta, just make sure it's consistent, okay? Cooking time, water amount, and all of that things because that pasta actually absorbs the water in the bowl. That sounded like I was treating you like an idiot, but no, it didn't, for some reason, it didn't make sense to me when I first started. So it's gonna change weight. So as it changes weight, you might have less in there, but it's gonna weigh more. So you're going to think you might actually end up eating less than what you actually need to. Okay. So you want to make sure that you are eating the proper amount. So weighing it raw, not cooked. And then for your chicken, steak, anything, you want to weigh that raw as well because as you cook it, the moisture gets pulled out of it. So you are pretty much having less, but it's the same amount. So then you end up eating more calories rather than eating the actual amount. So this is just like a little bit of a converter. Obviously, take it with a grain of salt. It's not going to be completely accurate depending on cook time, how much water is in the actual food itself, etc. So that's just a rough guide. With your tracking tips, making sure that you are tracking with a tracking app. It can be useful to jot it all down in a like notebook or something like that. I just find it takes too long. Make sure that you're tracking before you're eating, not after. And then making sure you're also checking the nutritional serves as you enter these into apps like MyFitnessPal, Easy Diet Diary, Chronometer, because unfortunately, not everyone has entered something in and it's actually not correct. So you could be eating something thinking, oh my God, win 150 calories when it's actually like 170 calories. That doesn't seem like much. 20 calories does not seem like a lot. But if you're eating that same thing every single day for 7 days, I'm not a mathematician. 2 times 7 is 14. That wouldn't make sense, would it? Yeah, no, it would. Yep, 2 times 7, 14, 140 calories extra a week, I think. This is why I have a calculator on my phone. So just making sure that you are not getting shortchanged. So you're having the right amount of calories when you enter that food in. Smart habits. So saving frequent meals. If you know that you're going to be eating that meal, save it as a meal and then you can just relog it all the time. Make sure that you're using that tear function effectively and then making sure that when you are doing a meal prep, you are weighing it raw and then you are cooking and then you're dividing it into the portions. So pretty much I use MyFitnessPal. I pretty much chuck everything into the recipe, how much it is, cook it, and then divide it by how many portions I need. For your hidden macros, these are your oils. So just a little drizzle can turn into, like, as it says on screen, 120 calories. If you're going out for food, I always recommend making sure you're getting the sauces, the dressing, your condiments, all of it. It's on the side. Your coffee add-ins, milk, unfortunately, has calories. So if you are getting a oat milk flat white from somewhere, it's going to have calories in it. Oat milk does tend to have more calories than something like your almond milk, for example. Just make sure you are tracking it in your MyFitnessPal. If you can kind of see behind, I like do a little sneaky. I try and like look behind the little coffee maker machine. If you can try and see what milk they're using, bonus. You can kind of like estimate it from there. And then taste, licks, bites, all of it. These are hidden calories as well. So a bite here and there, a taste here and there, a suck on a straw here and there, that's actually going to give you calories over time. If you are doing that multiple times a day, 7 days a week, you are still going to be getting probably in the 200 calorie range of macros of calories, sorry, brain fart, every single week. And then that's going to add up over the month. And then a few months down the track, you've gained 2 kilos and you're like, how? Or your weight loss goal hasn't been achieved. That's how. For your pro tips, you want to make sure that you are weighing your ingredients raw, like I said. When you are traveling, use estimations. So you are using your hands. So even if you get used to the habit of when you are tracking, sort of getting used to eyeballing how much it is. I used to play a little game with myself when I would try and guess the amount that I was cutting. So I try and be like, yep, that looks like 100 grams, cut it, and then put it onto the scale, and it'd be like a little reward when I got it correct. So essentially trying to make sure that you are getting as close as possible when you're cooking, and then that'll teach you how to like look at food when you're going out. Like, oh yeah, cool, that looks like 150 grams of chicken. Okay, it looks like 60 grams of avocado. So then you are able to roughly track when you are going out. And just remember that consistency is more important than perfection. Just making sure that you are consistently tracking your meals. If you're tracking 6 days out of the seven without having a blowout day on the seventh, you're pretty much living that 80-20 balance. These are things that you want to be implementing to make sure that you are hitting your goals or just fueling your body properly, just to start off with, to make sure that you are able to function as a normal human being. How good. Pretty much I just have how to build a balanced meal. So this is pretty much having your potatoes, green veg, all that sort of stuff. Those are your like your carbohydrates, whether that is simple, complex, or your like fruits and veg. You got your fats. You will notice my top one is peanut butter. Peanut butter is not a good protein source. Yes, you can get protein from it. However, it is not a solid substitution for protein. Okay, so you got all of those, and then you got your proteins. Cottage cheese, I recommend if you are in Australia, getting the Buller brand. Do not fuck around with anything else. Otherwise, it just tastes bitter and gross. Okay, it already looks gross. It doesn't need to taste how it looks. Buller, best brand for sure. When it comes to building a balanced meal, you essentially just want to make sure you have one of each of those things. It's so simple. You don't need to overcomplicate your meals, okay? It's going to sound really bodybuilder bro when I say this, but sticking with your basics, like your chicken and your rice and your vegetables, how can you go wrong? Okay. I feel like at the moment we are overloaded with needing to stimulate ourselves 24/7, building different recipes all the time that are low calorie, high protein, low fat, low carb. What's the fucking point? If you have a goal to build muscle and that's not going to help you, don't do it. It's just going to stress yourself even more. Okay. We're trying to make things like fat loss, like muscle gain, like maintenance as simple as possible. If you don't need to overcomplicate it, don't. If you are working 5 days a week at a 10-hour job, the last thing you want to do is worry about making low calorie pancakes for breakfast. Okay. Been there, done that on my shift work. Just make things as simple as possible so you can achieve your goals. There's no point overachieving, burning yourself out, but you got a really cool looking meal. Okay. You want to have a cool looking physique. And if your physique doesn't look as good as your food, then what's the point? Okay. Sometimes you need boring food to achieve a pretty good physique. That's a little bit of a harsh reality, but it's the truth. I hope you guys found this useful. If you do have any tips yourself that you would like to impart your knowledge on me, I'm always learning. I would love to hear. I hope this helped. If you have any questions for me based on anything that I've said today, please let me know. Hope this helped. And yeah, have a good day.